Hi, I'm Mike Heimburger. I am a composer. I write music like this. And like this. And like this. So like I said, I'm a composer. I've played in various bands, rock bands and ensembles. But what I really love is like film scores, film music, game music, big orchestral soundtracks, those kinds of things. I started making films and the music for those films back in high school. I just had to kind of scrounge together whatever equipment that I could put together and make that work. But even with that setup, I was able to create a feature-length claymation movie and several short films. After high school, I went to Alma College in Michigan. I did not major in music there, but I probably spent most of my time in the music building. One room in particular was the digital recording studio. I managed to make friends with the professor who runs it enough that he actually gave me a key so I could get in there during off hours, and I 100% spent way more time in that one room than anywhere else on campus. And while I was there, I used the equipment that they had, the computer and the software for multi-tracking, the mixing console, the audio effects, and the keyboards with their sampled instruments. At the time, this was a fairly high-tech studio room for a college to have. I made full use of that studio. I wrote and recorded the scores for a couple more features and a few shorts, one of which went to a festival, and just having access to that room meant so much to my musical progression. That place at Alma College was unofficially dubbed the MIDI Lab. Now, after I graduated college, I was back in the same boat that I was in high school, having to scrounge together pieces of equipment because I no longer had access to this room. And I have spent the next, lifetime putting that back together. Now, like I said, I didn't major in music, and I did not become a professional composer or musician, but I've continued to do this as a side project and passion project, and like the major hobby that I have. And it's been that way for a lot of years. College was a long time ago, if you can't tell. All of this started to change a couple years ago. A couple things happened. The first was obviously the pandemic. That changed a lot of things for a lot of people, but for me, working then remotely as a developer, I wanted to use that time that quarantine and the pandemic and all of that offered to just make the most of that, turn it into an opportunity, and really invest in the thing that I love doing, which is making music. And so I did something that I hadn't done in a lot of years, which is just invest in that hobby and get a new computer and jump into the world of sample libraries headlong and VSTs and virtual instruments and really kind of rededicate myself to composing and making music and using that as a force to change my life. And then the other thing that happened, same time, same year, in 2020, a huge mentor of mine, someone that really inspired me in the way that I do and approach music. My high school band director passed away. Now, I hadn't spoken to him in a very long time. I live in a different part of the country. I haven't been back there in quite a while. But he really was one of those teachers who just makes such a positive influence on myself and so many other students that finding out that news just really struck me in a way that I didn't anticipate. I was surprised by how much that affected me. And I mean, it forced me to think back to those years in high school, playing in marching band and jazz band and concert band, but also at the same time developing my composition abilities and skills that really made me reprioritize what I wanted to do. And so these past couple of years, I've really had this idea that's been formulating and developing, and that is what I want to share with you. And that is the MIDI Lab. What I really want this to do is to recapture the things that helped me so much in my time there at Alma College in my musical pursuits. Take that and really make it available to any aspiring young musician, composer, arranger, what have you. So let's get into some of the details. My purpose for the MIDI Lab, there's really three of them. So the first purpose is to offer that facility that is hard to put together yourself if you are starting out and you don't have the means to get all of the equipment and software and instruments that you need to start out as a composer, arranger, musician. That's what I experienced before college, and that's what I experienced after college when I suddenly no longer had that recording studio facility available to me. In the past decades, where it's actually been possible to build your own home studio, it still, even today, is very expensive, very time-consuming, and requires a lot of knowledge that you don't necessarily have starting out. So the first feature of the MIDI Lab is to have that facility, have that place where the musicians can go to actually produce their vision. My second main goal for the MIDI Lab has to do with the knowledge that's required to get your start. There's so much that I've learned just over the years, just experimenting and trying different things, but I wouldn't have even been able to do those experiments if someone hadn't first just shown me how to start. That requires education coming from a good teacher who is inspiring enough to give you that push, that motivation, and that knowledge to start. That's what I had in my high school band director. That's what I had in college from that professor who ran the MIDI Lab there. I've had a few key individuals who were able to put in that motivation and hand me that knowledge that I needed in order to start. So the second main thing that I want the MIDI Lab to offer is classes. So that would include classes in basic how to use your software, your DAW, your digital audio workstation, how to orchestrate with MIDI, how to use sample libraries and make them sound realistic and believable, and how to create your own samples using sampling software that you can use in your own compositions and market for other people to use. And also, this is one I'm especially excited about because I haven't really seen it offered any other physical place, is how to use game audio engines to put together your compositions in order to create interactive music that can be used in games and other media. There's lots of places you can go to learn how to make video games, but they don't usually spend a whole lot of time on the music side of things. And that would be invaluable if you are wanting to pursue a music career in video games. And then the third final goal, which in many ways is kind of the most important one, is I want the MIDI Lab to be able to create a vibrant community of musicians, composers, arrangers, music makers who can all inspire each other, help each other, collaborate, and share their knowledge. Much like for other industries of business and technology, there have been for the last several years these co-working spaces where if it doesn't work to work remotely from your home, you can go to these places, rent a desk or whatever to work. And one of the benefits they offer is you get to work next to so many other professionals who might be in the same industry or even different industries. And just being in close proximity to those people can inspire you and give you ideas that you wouldn't have thought of on your own. and foster collaborations. Well, likewise, if you get a group of musicians, creative individuals working in the same place, there's going to be collaboration. There's going to be ideas that bounce off of each other. Let's say you have one guy who's really wanting like a live mandolin part for his composition, and you have another guy working at the next desk who happens to play mandolin. Let's get those two people together and make something cool. And it's not only just the collaboration opportunities and the creative opportunities that would come from having that kind of community, it's also the business opportunities. Once this really becomes something and gets a name going for itself, it's going to draw attention from film studios, game studios, media companies, places that are looking for musicians and composers. Are they going to want to go online and look at random portfolios and sift through this information, or would they be very interested in a localized talent pool of ready-to-go composers and musicians? I think definitely the second option. So for the MIDI Lab, I want it to be a membership model, and I want it to be affordable. So much like a gym, you get a membership at a gym, and then you have access to the facility, to all of the equipment there, and you have access to classes, yoga, Pilates, weightlifting. You have access to personal trainers. Much like that, the MIDI Lab could function on a membership model where you pay for a membership monthly or yearly, and you then gain access to the facility, the equipment there, the computers, the software, the instruments. You also gain access to be able to sign up for classes, the classes that I mentioned previously. Also possible one-on-one tutoring or mentorship programs. But then I really want that to be an affordable option for anyone in the community. I want any aspiring composer, musician, arranger to be able to come to the MIDI Lab, be able to afford the membership, and have access to all of that equipment that allows them to create their vision. And so this is why I'm coming to you. This is why I'm asking you if you share my vision, if you want to be a part of this. This is something that is lacking when it comes to the progression, the career progression for musicians, especially composers and arrangers who have to assemble all of this on their own and work out of lonely home studios. It's something that is needed in the world, and it's something that can definitely benefit a community. I'm here in the Reno area. I'm in Sparks, which is a neighboring city to Reno, and that's where I'm looking to start the first MIDI Lab, is in the Reno-Sparks area. I'm still looking for physical locations, and I'm still needing to assemble some of the equipment that is required to set up these workstations for the musicians to use. So I'm asking you guys, if you share this vision, if you are interested, if you want to see a community built among musicians and help supply a means of progressing their careers that doesn't really exist for them right now, then I ask you to please consider this idea. And if you are, then I ask you to please share it. Become a proponent for this idea, for the MIDI Lab. Just like I want to assemble that community of musicians who can help each other out, collaborate, I want to here create a community of advocates for those musicians. Be that advocate that helps those musicians out, helps them get their start, and helps it not take 20 years or 30 years before they finally can make the music that they want to make. So I want to thank you for your time, and thank you for your consideration, and please check out our website to learn more about the MIDI Lab. Thank you.